There are two 5 by 180 millimeter bolts that hold the stator assembly to the outer housing. These do not have to be tight. They're merely here for indexing to hold everything together while you're assembling it. At this point, what I'm doing is just making sure that the stator has engaged into the step of the end housing. The next step would be to take the rotor and inspect the slip rings and the end bearing. This is a new rotor, so of course everything is in nice shape. You notice the end bearing has a clip on it. Make sure that the clip is towards the rotor, not towards the end housing. The groove that this clip lays in is not the same depth all the way around. It is actually deeper. Right here where this dot is put. So this side of the groove is deeper than this side of the groove. The clip that goes in it, if you can see, is not a perfect elliptical clip. There's a slight bubble right here. This bubble should line up with the dot on the end bearing. If you use the original mounting bolt, slide in from the opposite end, you can then guide the rotor into the bearing carrier. And now the rotor bearing has engaged with the end bearing carrier. At this time, I take all the wiring and I fold it to where it exits through the housing right where the circuit breakers are normally mounted. At this point, take the rotor and make sure it spins freely. You shouldn't hear any scraping or anything else against the stator assembly. If you do, it usually means that the stator is not bedded correctly into the end housing. This one spins nice and freely. The next step is to put the metal shield around the stator assembly. This is simply a large piece of sheet metal. It's nothing tricky. In order to get it in place correctly, I use a large hose clamp. Just make sure that the 2 pins are sticking through the slots. Once the band is around the stator nice and snug, go ahead and fold the 2 tabs completely over. Incidentally, this can be done without a hose clamp. It's just that I prefer to use it this way. It allows you to get it nice and tight without cutting yourself. Next step is take the fan that was originally removed from the rotor, place it back on. The fan is held in place with 3 5mm bolts. Incidentally, this is not the way Honda says to do it in their service manual. This is simply the way I do it. The only reason I do it this way is because I like to install the stator and the rotor all in one piece, because it's a lot easier to index the stator and rotor when they're sitting there on a bench than it is to attempt to slide the stator over the rotor the way the Honda service manual has you doing it. There's a 10 by 289mm bolt. Goes right through the center. And then 4 8mm bolts to go around the outside. And they are 8 by 190mm. I put the cart up against a workbench only because when I'm pushing the stator and rotor on, I don't want the cart rolling away from me. It's tricky enough as it is. If you lay a screwdriver handle right dead center under the stator, it generally holds it nicely so that you don't have to lift and jiggle as much. That's probably as good a place as any to go ahead and start a new section.